Here we go. Good morning, everybody. This is a webinar entitled Breaking Bad in Retail, Reinventing the Basics. Branding, user experience, stock and supply, last mile, the whole value chain of retail has been shaken to its roots by the COVID crisis. Global Retail News, in partnership with Sales Layer, have gathered today a fantastic panel of senior retail experts from all over Europe, Spain, Portugal, the UK, Germany, to share insights and thoughts around how they have tackled the crisis so far and what prospects they have for the coming years. We will discuss new consumer trends that may change forever the way retail is done, and share thoughts about the future and what it may hold. My name is Michel Koch. I will be your moderator for the day. I am the publisher of Global Retail News and the CEO of the Institute of Connected Commerce in France, and have been in retail for more than 20 years as digital and e-commerce director for large retailers in France, Germany, and the UK. Today we have with us Wade Eager. He's the head of retail of Facebook in the UK, helping C-suites, boards, and marketing departments to fully utilize the Facebook family for apps to grow the business. Wade is Facebook's industry specialist in fashion, luxury, and CPG. We have also Eduardo Piedade. You are the group and CEO of SONAE IM, the corporate VC of SONAE Group. SONAE is one of the leading and largest retailers in Iberia, a multinational company managing a diversified portfolio of businesses in retail, food and non-food, financial services, technology, shopping centers, and telecommunications. Ignacio Sierra, corporate general manager of TENDAM, formerly known as Cortefiel Group, with a heritage of 140 years, is one of Europe's leading fashion retailers, present in some 80 countries with more than 2,000 points of sale, 75% of which are directly operated stores. You are also the founding president of the EBCA, the European Branded Clothing Alliance, since 2007. And Dr. Stephan Zoll, CEO of SIGNA Sports United in Germany. SIGNA Sports United is an e-commerce and tech platform with more than 80 owned web shops in 17 countries, generating more than 650 million net revenues this year. You also run 23 offline stores across Europe and have built a network of 500 partner stores. You are the #1 sports e-commerce platform in Europe with a market leading position in bike, tennis, outdoor, and team sports. Thank you for being with us. I will start with, I'd like to ask you, each of you, if you could tell us a few words of what has happened in your business since the beginning of lockdown in your country. Let's first start maybe with some market and consumer insights from Facebook. Wade Eager, needless to present Facebook, can you share some insights around how people have behaved during the lockdown and what social media usage, such as Facebook, Instagram, and WeChat, meant in terms of consumer behaviors in particular?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Michael. Great question. So we've seen a significant increase across the usage on our platforms. We've just reported that there have been over 3 billion people actively now using Facebook, up from 2.6 billion. So there has been a significant rise that's come along, and there's 2.6 billion people alone on Facebook that, using that platform alone. And in terms of the behaviors and what we're seeing happening on our platform, messaging has increased by more than 50%. Voice and video has more than doubled across our WhatsApp and Messenger platforms. And we're really seeing the platform being used to connect. Our mission is to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. And we're seeing that behavior really starting to take place with the users on the platform. So a lot of people are using it to be connected in this time of social distancing and when there was a full lockdown in place. And we're really seeing that's the part that people are using Facebook for.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. It looks like you know, a lot of the digital tools that we have were really helpful in that period. But that said, you know, the impact of lockdown must have been quite dramatic for retailers. So maybe a question for you, Ignacio. What has been, you know, the impact for your business and fashion retail in general? Can you share some facts and figures of what happened in the past month in this market?
Yeah, absolutely. Spain was one of the most impacted countries in the south of Europe. We were very fast impacted after Italy was. So I remember the weekend prior to the March 14th, we decided on Friday really to close the stores before the confinement was approved by the government, because we realized, I mean, the traffic was dramatically plunged, and there was some risk for our workers. So we decided to react very fast. That represented that in less than 1 week, I mean, we had more than 80 or 98% of the stores closed from one day to another. It's been reported by the sector in Spain, at least in the fashion and the textile retail, a drop, accumulated drop by 78-79%, but expected it won't be less than 35-40% at the year end for sure. Thinking that we started our fiscal year in March, that would be a huge impact. Fortunately, I mean, there are two good things. One, we really recovered from the previous crisis, the financial crisis, and we were in a very good momentum in general, but in our country and in our company in particular. So I mean, we were okay in cash. So we made up for even to complete, I mean, the temporary reduction file from our employees with loans and with microcredits, no interest, and completing the subsidies. And second, fortunately as well, Spain is reacting fast. The confinement was very strict, and we are now reporting even 0 casualties or zero deaths. So let's say, I mean, if everything is contained during the confinement, we will start to recover, but we have been really hit, Michel.
Yeah, it's a sad thing, and we have seen some fragile retailers also fall down completely. But hopefully, the strongest, like yourself, will recover and come back to normal at some point. Dr. Zoll, SIGNA Sports is mostly about e-commerce. So it would seem that the impact of the lockdown in your business wasn't so bad, was it? And also, I wanted to ask, what about the way your teams reacted to the surge of activity, and how did you support them in this particular context?
Right. So connecting with what Ignacio just said, we did see some impacts, but they were varying across geographies and across verticals in our business, to be honest. So first of all, maybe if we take a step back, when Corona hit or was discovered in China, you know, in January, everything got public. We initially thought actually it's a supply problem for us, possibly for the season, you know, which is spring, summer. Then we pivoted, obviously, in February, March, where we saw this is in Europe now, and it might become a demand problem. And then the impact actually struck us geography and vertical wise in a little bit different way. So some verticals, like our bike vertical, our outdoor vertical, were not affected a lot. In fact, they were probably benefiting to a certain degree from it after a while our tennis business and our team sport business, which is mainly football or soccer, they were affected quite a bit because all tennis clubs were shut down. And also, you know, you couldn't do any club sports or amateur sport in soccer and in football anymore. So those were the vertical differences during the Corona time. And from a geography perspective, a little bit different. While you know that Sweden hasn't locked down, so there was very little impact there. In the DACH, in the German-speaking regions, we saw impact, but even more so with the lockdown, the stricter lockdown in the southern European region with Italy, Spain, and France, you know, being more severely locked down for a longer period of time. So that actually affected our business quite heavily as well. And that affected carriers and, you know, our supply chain to a degree. So we had to pivot quite a lot. Which probably leads us to your second part of the question. So what do we do, right? Now, as we discovered, this is a demand, possibly a demand problem. We'll have to address it. We were thinking about 4 dimensions how to address it with the team. The first one was, what are the commercial activities we have to rethink, or at least to be agile, to maybe readjust. That includes things like inventory management, pricing, our marketing activities, online and offline. All of these things had to be reconsidered. Second stream was operational activities. Obviously, we had to take care of all the hygiene factors and the hygiene policies that we need to take care of to make sure that all of our people are safe. That's the #1 priority, obviously, for all of us. So that took quite an effort. And then home office establishment, right? People went to home office and were voluntarily in the beginning. Later on, we had to do home office also obligatory in some offices. So that's the second thing that happened, and many other operational issues we had to turn around. The third dimension was financial in the finance section. So, a lot of scenario planning, because none of us knew how long this would take, how deep the impact would be, and so on. We probably still don't know exactly yet, but that required us to do quite some intensive scenario planning, not just for cash, but also for business planning purposes. So that was quite intense. And then the fourth stream was around legal and government requirements. So we had to make sure that in all the different jurisdictions, because there wasn't a real European, let's say, policy framework anymore. There was more country by country. We had to make sure that we can follow that every day there were news coming out, that we were up to date, basically regularly, and so we could pivot around that, what we needed to do and we could do in the changing legal environment. So those were the main factors. And how did we organize around that? So basically with my leadership team, we had daily calls, pretty much starting with the first lockdown mid-March, and they went on until very recently, so more than 2 months, 2.5 months we took them. And in those daily calls, we had a rhythm of going through what happened in the business, what's the legal stuff, what's the financial stuff. So we went through these criteria and tried to assess it mutually. So A, everybody was on the same page, and B, we could discover while we were walking, right, together, because everybody, especially in the beginning, in the first 1 or 2 weeks, picked up things that maybe not everybody else has picked up. So we kind of bundled that in this daily call. And in terms of pivoting from a team perspective, maybe 1 or 2 examples. So while we have a couple of stores, we had to close them down. And we asked some of the store employees, as in some of our businesses, we had such a high demand, as I said, in bike, and we came to our limit in warehouse for delivery. So we asked our employees that couldn't work in the stores anymore, actually in the tennis store in the Stuttgart region, if they would be willing for a couple of weeks to go to the warehouse and help our colleagues there in the bike area, also the Stuttgart region. So and they said luckily yes, and they're very, very much hyped, if you wish, that they could support the business while they couldn't do their regular work. So that happened. That was very, very encouraging to see that our colleagues kind of stood in for each other. And it also went to the management team, obviously, including myself. We had a couple of backlogs building up in some of our businesses like bike and outdoor. So I also, for example, attended a night shift in one of the warehouses to just get ready to get the backlog in control, if you wish. And even though I'm not the most productive person in the warehouse, at least could package up a couple of packages and send them out the next day. So those were the types of things we actually did on the ground to address this very, very turbulent time.
That's really interesting. I mean, the people management was a big thing in the last couple of months. And so my next question is for you, Eduardo. As an investment arm, can you share some information about the impact of the crisis on your business, both maybe retail and the investment part, and also a few words about how your teams operated during that time?
Yeah, of course. Good morning to all. First, in the retail part of SONAE Group, we have quite different realities there, as you can imagine. We have the food business grocer that were booming sales in the beginning. We reached capacity of the online in the first day. So it was a fight to increase the capacity of the e-commerce website every day, every week, because you have windows of delivering that were not good for us and not good for the customers. So it was the business were booming. We saw even across fashion or consumer electronics, the online part was growing 6-7 times. It was this magnitude. And we didn't close the stores in consumer electronics in Portugal because this was one of the areas that were considered critical, and also food retailer. But all the other businesses, retail business, were a little bit as described by Ignacio. They were closed, namely fashion. We have a small operation in e-commerce that is representing 5 to 10% of the overall sales, and those were growing, but the overall stores were closed. Main concern in the beginning, of course, were about our people and working from home. And we at SONAE AM, we have 33 companies in the portfolio. We accomplished to all of them to work from home. Since we have a global portfolio, we had some companies based in Asia that were suffering that impact first. Then in Europe, in March, we have all the discussions with our companies about contingency plans, what to do, guarantee that they have the conditions, namely cash, to navigate this period. And we put an 18-month period ahead of us. And when we have these discussions at the time with companies based in the US, they were not so concerned, but some weeks later, they were just seeing that the impact will hit them as well. So we have a couple of weeks that, after taking care of our people, taking care of that the companies that we have in the portfolio have all the conditions in place. And that was weeks that we have calls from the morning to the end with 33 companies just targeting those plans, what to do, if we need additional cash, how we can do to get those cash, and also to have discussions about go to market, the product they have, because we have 3 main areas of investment: technology for retail, for telecommunications, and also cybersecurity. Cybersecurity and technology for telcos were more or less defensive in this period, not suffering a lot, much more about the growth trajectory and new customers. That was the challenge. In retail tech, that was not the case. So you have technologies that were also with a lot of demand, namely e-commerce enablers, but you have other that were more to offline, that were suffering, with retailers asking to hold payments or churning. And therefore we need to do a huge work of adjusting the cost base, adjusting also in some cases, adapting or adjusting the product to fit better this new reality.
Absolutely, and it looks like the adjustment is not finished. We'll see that in the coming months. Maybe the aftermath of the current crisis will lead to other adjustments. So I'm moving now to the reopening phase, and the phase when the stores started to reopen and people were allowed to come out of containment. The question then it would be for Ignacio, how did the deconfinement take place? What deconfinement measures have been put in place for your customers or your team?
Well, let's say, first of all, in Spain, at least, it's been by phases, and 3 phases, which is our major market, our home market. And it's been gradually, the first initial openings were by appointment. It was a nice experience. I mean, we had the choice to communicate to our customers. We have a strong loyalty program all across our brands. And we contacted with them and we offered them the possibility. And we had a positive impact also in engagement, but not only in presence, but as you can guess, that was more service than results generation. The most relevant thing is to combine security, safety, and health, but also the operation as an attractive moment and as attractive experience. I mean, initially, the people, when they get out from home in the confinement, we all were a bit unsafe. We were just used to go to the food retailers and once per week or once every 2 weeks. Mainly the father or the mother just alone, and we had to analyze that we should avoid any kind of behavior that was reluctant to the customer, reluctant to the contact with the others, but protecting. So we have facilitated all over the place a safe environment, a clean environment, with notice, with advertising, with signals all over the store, with procedures to maintain clothing safe, with managing the clock words and the protocols mainly to act and to behave. And gradually it's been better and better. I think that we'll say if initially, the first movement, of course, as it was mentioned by Stephan as well, it was the e-commerce. The e-commerce, after the very first moment of the confinement in which there was shock in anything, has ramped up and come back to double-digit strong growth. And it's not yet significant, but it's close to 9% of our overall operations. But in the physical stores, in the brick and mortar, we are seeing an increase, and at some point in time, a bit better than expected in the initial moments, in the second phase, in which bigger stores were allowed to open. Initially, we had the problem that only below 400 square meter stores were allowed to open in the first phase after the zero phase. But now that we have started to open the malls and we have started to open all stores, things start to get a bit more to normal. But as I mentioned, our main goal now is, after the safety of our customers and our employees for sure, is to give service, to be there for our customers, rather than to focus really on EBITDA. We are focusing now at this moment really in generating cash, in protecting cash, and in sharing really service with our customers and content.
Absolutely. I think it was really important to reassure both customers and staff about their safety and the security, and then obviously customers came back to stores with a mission. So conversion seemed to be higher in the initial phase of reopening. Stephan,
Michel,
yes, wait.
Yeah, can I just add something to that? Because
sure.
For a lot of the retailers that we're seeing, I look after a lot of the high street retailers. I've got over 186 clients in my team's portfolio. One of the things just to call out, and one of the things that we're really noticing, is that when you think about shopping, it was a social experience before COVID-19, whereas now it's really, really stressful. You think about going to the grocery store and all of that. So, and a lot of the people have touched on, the security aspect and the hygiene aspect of it. But there is this real big change for consumers that are taking place, where it used to be a fun and social experience, and now there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear that has kicked in. So the consumer mindset has significantly changed. And even when we looked at some of the stores that have opened in other countries for some of the larger retailers, we saw that the footfall was down by over 80%. So even though the store had opened, the footfall was down. And so that's also creating a real concern for some of the retailers, because as we're starting to get ready to reopen in the UK on the 15th of June, the cost base is going to go up. A lot of customers are going to have to bring or retailers, will bring their people off furlough. So the cost base is going to go up significantly, but the revenue per that store isn't going to go up in that follow if the footfall doesn't come through. So it's just, it is a big circle and a big loop, but the consumer, the mindset, what's happening, anxiety, everything's all playing its part. And we have to find a way to work through that, to create this new experience, to create this safety mechanism so that people can feel confident that they can go back into store.
That's exactly, it's a very good point. How to get customers back in the stores in the short and long term is a real question in terms of model. And so, question for Stephan, maybe you're dealing with a almost a pure play business, but with lots of touch points as well. What results have you seen in the last month, and what are the forecasts for the next couple of months and the year end? Stephan? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, now I hear you again, Michel.
All right. So I'll repeat my question.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about how to get customers back in the store in the short and long term. As Wade just mentioned, the consumer habits and ways of shopping have changed. The experience is totally different from what it used to be, going from pleasure to anxiety. And so what are your forecasts? I mean, with a business which is both online and in stores, what do you see as the forecast for Q3, and Q4 in particular?
Right. So I can echo what Ignacio and Wade said, with the one caveat maybe. We're running a couple of specialist stores, right? For example, tennis. We have 21 tennis stores. In those stores, we saw, obviously it's not the same pleasure as before because of all the social distancing, hygiene measures, and so on. But still, people are really eager to buy and shop for their favorite items, in those tennis stores. So we actually see quite nice revenues, as expected, to be honest, coming back, not just cost coming back. So that's a positive outlier from a store perspective. On an online perspective, the challenges are a little bit different, obviously, right? So we will have to balance with a very big spike that we've seen over the last weeks. We'll have to balance delivery capabilities with the demand that's coming in. And that was the main task over the last weeks. And I think that will probably fade out a little bit with demand more normalizing over the next weeks. But we had to make sure that we don't, that we cannot deliver the items that actually got sold on our website, because that leads to long lead times, right? Not just because of us, but also because of carriers, quite frankly, that need to ramp back up, right? So they didn't have the capacities anymore that they had pre-crisis. So we needed to make sure that we kind of ramp it versus just spike. And then people would have to wait 10, 15 or more days for their product, which is terrible, obviously, right? So that was our online challenge here. Going forward, I think we found that balance quite well. I think we're coming back to a more normal demand pattern in the next coming weeks. And overall, as I said in the beginning, we are more benefiting from the move towards online of consumers, right? Because as Wade said, from pleasure to anxiety in terms of stores, that demand has shifted to an extent to online, and that's where we can pick it up and service it, obviously, right?
So yes, capacity is definitely a struggle for both online and offline retailers. Capacity in stores with distanciation is a new thing. I mean, and stores don't really, appreciate that. But yes, clearly new challenges. I would like to move to Eduardo maybe a little bit, and then we come back to you, Wade. From a tech perspective, what kind of good practices have you observed in your retail and tech environment, and how would you say technology and digital technology in particular can help omnichannel retailers in this particular moment?
Yeah, what we have seen is that the retail landscape changed a lot. So you have brands that they have the strategy based on the offline, for instance, and they see that stores closed, they were not able to trade anymore. So either they have an e-commerce platform or other ways to make it possible, or then the revenues went out to zero. So you have like the need even more of having an e-commerce platform, having other ways of trading. So some examples of what we have done, we come up trying to do wherever is possible in the retail business to sell. For instance, we start having the telephones from our stores, putting on the website for the customers if they want to call directly to our stores. They could also select the products with a sales assistant throughout the phone, and then they take the products to their car. So it was some trials to see, or just opening a window of the store close to a hypermarket, try to sell fashion throughout that window with the store closed. So it's something that trying to see everything that was possible to deliver. Of course, some of them will continue and some of them will disappear, but it's something that, given the context of change, you need to have whatever you can do to sell. Of course, technology was key, because most of the problems that we have seen with the reaching capacity of the e-commerce was most of them related with technology, but also related with supply chain, etc. But if you were not prepared with a good e-commerce website or an omni-channel strategy and a digital strategy, you struggle a lot. And you have seen suppliers and restaurants that also trying to come to this retail environment. You see restaurants try to sell products directly to consumers. You see also brands that sells through retailers, but in restaurants, etc., that they, without that part of the revenue, go directly to customers. So the technology was essential for them to continue to trade and trying to look at new approach. This will bring that this omni-channel that is quite different depending on if each retailer or each player is something that it will be the new reality. It cannot be possible just to be based on one pillar or one segment without taking care of this entire ecosystem. And what we are seeing with customers is that they like to be engaged with brands. Of course, the impact of going to a store right now is not a very friendly experience. We are seeing conversion going up dramatically. That is, the people that want to go to stores is to buy, is not just to travel, and that is a reality. But then you need to have the technology in place and the processes for the people be safe and you to continue to trade. And we see like new areas like counting, etc., that was technology that was not, they reach a peak in the past, but right now for you to continue to trade you need to know how many customers you have at your store. You have a limit, a capacity limit, and then it's a reality that again some of the retailers were not prepared with that, or they were, but with a different approach, much more on the journey inside the stores, interaction, marketing interaction. And right now it's the basic again. So I think that technology is a pillar, like the processes, and that you need to have in place to continue to trade and also to improve the performance, because this is a reopening of the stores. As a reopening, you should decide which stores you want to open, and also to have the chance of challenging the role of that store. And this environment is a much more environment that need to change and not to do the same as you have done in the past, because it doesn't work.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. I think technology will play an increasingly important role. We see that, you know, contactless, for instance, has been a big thing before confinement, and now contactless is also a must, whether it's about paying or other things like, you know, calling the stores and everything. I'd like to come back to you, Wade, with regards to advertising. I think obviously Facebook is a major player in advertising, and so from an advertising perspective, how did you see how the retail reopening situation translate in terms of social media trends in that space?
Sure. I just want to touch on that piece on technology first, and then let's come to that. You know, we're seeing a real significant, the way I like to describe COVID-19 that's happening at the moment is it's an accelerator. That's what we're seeing it as, right? So a lot of companies that were just keeping their head above water, it's accelerated their demise. And we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of big companies going into administration, a lot of high street retailers going into administration. We're also seeing, though, this accelerator coming through where it's opportunities for these companies to be able to cut through the red tape. You know, we know that speed is going to be the key in order to get businesses out of the norm. And what I've noticed when I look through the portfolio and the clients that I've worked with, and you have them, I don't look at them as just as retailers, but businesses that have been around for 20 plus years. They were born after the technology came into play. And when I see a lot of pure players come through, they have a lot of different ways. Their whole business model is set up differently. They don't have the bureaucracy in order to make things happen. And you see the same, you know, before I joined Facebook, I was in retail and I worked in airlines. And I used to think they were my problems. But actually now, having spoken to all the different clients, I realized they're actually the industry problems. And you see the same bottlenecks that are happening across. So it's interesting just to see these types of things taking place and seeing that how can they accelerate through this. And I'm going to steal a quote from Alex Kaiser, who's from Y Receipts. He's the CEO of Y Receipts. And he said, the difference is that online, if you were to say to it's a mindset shift again, right? Would you ever say to an online retailer, we are only going to tell you about 20% of your customers? So why is that okay for a retailer to think like that, right? So online know 100% of all of their customers. They know everything about them. They get, once they've made a purchase, they get all of their data and their insight to be able to work with. Yet retailers don't think that way. So it's just looking at it from a mindset point of view. So that's sort of what we're seeing in that technology space, is really about connecting all of the dots and being able to make that omni-channel experience off the back of it. And then now, just long-winded, but now to go into the advertising. You know, as usage has gone up on our platform, naturally advertisers have gone out there to find how they can go out there and communicate with their customers. You know, depending on the industry, you know, travel and entertainment, there has been they've been heavily affected because of what's happened at COVID. And then we're also seeing some of the retailers now. Each retailer, there's not one retailer that's done the same thing. Everyone's done what's worked for their business. So some have decided to close down all their physical stores, but leave their online store open. Some decided to close their online store as well as they work through it. And now we're seeing the reintroduction of all of the stores, all the online coming on. And now as everyone's getting ready for the 15th of June in the UK. I think what we have to look at is the supply chain and also the stock. So what we're seeing is a lot of retailers are starting to move into sale earlier to generate the cash to move the stock so they can get ready for as spring summer comes into play in August, etc. So we're seeing a lot of people getting ready, gone into sale early, and we're seeing some really, really strong results coming off the back of that. We see retailers that have gone out and really pushing that brand message to re-emphasize why they are. And going back to, like, we know that the majority of retailers, 20 to 30% of their revenue comes from online, but the majority still comes from offline. So what is that transition as they've gone to offline? We know that, you know, we're seeing really significant growth that's happening on their online presence, but it's not covering the revenue gap that's happened from the offline side. But now they're just trying to find that balance of what does it look like post-COVID. We know that the consumer behaviors change. We know the grey power has come out of, you know, it's just significantly risen because of due to the convenience and also the necessity of having to shop online from being home. So there is a significant change that's happened on the online space and the consumer space for online. And that's how they can work to capitalize on that and really put their brand at the forefront to create that saliency up front for the consumer mind.
So yeah, I mean, definitely a major boost of online sales and some actually new adopters of online or late adopters that have been forced into becoming online customers. Interesting what you mentioned also about the comparison between technology in store and online and the gap basically between customer understanding and those 13% that you mentioned. I think it's the same applies to retail analytics, since as Eduardo was saying just before, there's a lot of technology around people counting that are now also helping stores to understand exactly what's going on in the store in terms of interactions, people picking up products and putting them back. And you feel like store analytics is almost as precise as online analytics as it stands. So really a lot of improvements in terms of data and how we capture that in the stores as well. Let's look now at the short and midterm and how COVID crisis may impact the go-to-market strategies in retail. I'd like to go back to Stephan maybe, and then we move into other areas. But Stephan, what part does customer experience play nowadays? And what do you think is important, is really important for customers, or price rather than experience?
So obviously very, very important, right? From also not just store, we touch base on that, how from pleasure to anxiety the consumer is currently acting in terms of store visits and experience, and also online it's super important. I mean, especially maybe if you take the aspect of more and more now of the traditional bricks and mortar retailers now finally investing heavily probably into online, right? So there'll be more and more online competition, I expect, over the next months and years to come. So it's even more important to differentiate on the customer experience, which includes the first time that the customer gets known of you, right? So the first messaging that you send out to the customers, be it via Facebook or other channels, to the first touch point you have on the site, on the mobile device, or wherever that is. to the experience on the site, on the mobile device, to shop something, to the delivery, to the customer service. So the entire chain of the customer touch points are very important to get right. And I think it's important to also get right with a specific customer understanding in mind. As an example, us being sports specialists and trying to differentiate around the passion of sports, be it a biker or be it a tennis player or be it an outdoor fashionista, an enthusiast, we try to really understand what are these customer segments, what's a customer doing when he wants to buy something for outdoor or for tennis or for bike and so on, and trying to cater and customize the experience around that. Very, very important. Starts with filtering, starts with deep content on descriptions of a bike, for example. It starts with extra offerings like stringing for a tennis device, for a racket, right? Very easy test and learn kind of service for tennis, or a delivery on bike that goes to your footstep, to your doorstep, and customizes the bike, fine-tunes the bike right there for you, so it's perfectly fitted for you. All these types of things add up to the customer experience that makes it special and makes it attractive for a consumer. And I think one thing is for clear, that's been there for a long time, and it continues. The expectations of the customers will just continue to rise, and everybody who's fighting for that customer, and the attention and the trust, will have to adapt and have to move forward with those expectations being set.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for that. I'll come back to Ignacio now with a question about stores versus distance shopping or online retailing. Let's look at the new role for the store. What do you feel, Ignacio, is the in-store experience of tomorrow? What will it look like?
Okay, I share a view with my colleagues in the sense of, as Eduardo said, ecosystem, and also as Wade mentioned about the knowledge of the customer. I mean, I would say this is like a game, a video game in which you change really the screen, and there's now a different screen, and probably tomorrow will be another screen, and you are in the screen acting, but you have to remember what the game is about and who are you, what's your role in the game. And that represents that really, why are you being elected by the customer? What are the reasons? And you have to think about it in the whole ecosystem. And that really means that you have to keep being relevant, no matter the way in which you really approach. What's important for us, answering your question, Michel, stores will have to be a good place of experience. They have to come back to the service as they were many years ago, but in a different way, because I mean, people in the store will have to be really well connected and well trained to the general, to the overall systems to provide that experience, sharing the knowledge about the customer, being efficient with the whole ecosystem. For example, I mean, stores are essential if you have the right capillarity to decrease the expense of the last mile, because many people probably will pick up the garment or the product in the store rather than in the office or at home, maybe because there's nobody at home, but probably will have really mean less cost in the overall operation for the ecosystem. I mean, more communities. I mean, we're one of the very pioneers in the loyalty programs. We have close to, well above 25 million members, but close to 30 million over the world in our brands. And we were one of the pioneers, and that really represents why they are being so extremely generous with you to provide the current account, in the banking account, their data, their birthday, their everything, because I mean, you care. And you care about them, about their sizes, about their experience, their past experience, their ideas to improve. And that community really generates the relevancy and the success for them as a brand, as a player. I mean, I always say, I give I teach sometimes in the university. I always explain my students, I mean, that a brand is just an equation of trust. And they do trust you in service or in that you are the best provider of a kind of fashion, or you connect with their lifestyle. and that has to be represented in the store, but connected with the e-commerce and connected with the data. And you have to choose what is your real bet and what is the strongest bet to maintain that relevancy. And eventually it can be data, it can be a device on the screen, whatever. I have very clear what are ours.
Absolutely, and you're talking about large databases and knowing your customers and what they do, as you know, as Stephan mentioned as well. I think everybody wants to have the single view of the customer in their database, but I think it's also important, as you just said, to ensure that the customer has a single view of you as a brand, and so you're consistent across channels. I'd like to go back to that experience, and you know, one of the you know, we always talk about the unnamed Amazon, who's always there in the background. It's like Darth Vader, you know, or you don't talk about it because it's the big enemy of retail, and we saw that in the NRF. But anyway, let's talk a bit about Amazon and what they have, you know, gone through during the crisis. I think the last mile was a challenge for them as well. But the experience of convenience and being delivered at home has been their forte forever. And so, Eduardo, could you maybe, you know, comment on how you feel retailers can match that perfect, you know, seamless experience of that Amazon can offer, which is very different from an in-store experience, but which is based, as Ignacio was saying, on trust.
Yeah, I think that if you are a retailer and you want to play with the same arguments or the same variables that are Amazon playing, probably it's impossible for you. So if you see in Portugal, you see the quality of services of Amazon that they are delivering from Spain to Portugal, they suffer a lot. So when before it was 1-2 days deliveries, right now was 1-2 weeks if the product was available. So for you to have local players with stores and also online operation, the quality of services was much better. So this is also an example that with the specific context, you could provide a much better service to your customer than Amazon, for instance. Again, is the play of, and you are seeing that in the US with Walmart and Amazon, is the play of pure player, and also to have the stores, and now you can play the assets that you have and also make it valuable. And of course, when you see Amazon, you see what they are doing in several verticals in retail. Some of them, they are quite strong. In others, they are still testing. Of course, they are a very strong player with a lot of cash, and therefore they have the time to make it right. And even in this period, they are not so concerned about profit, and other retailers don't have that luck, that possibility. But of course, in some areas, the service they provide are quite relevant. In others, it's not. If you discuss fashion and what they are doing in fashion, if this is best of breed, it's arguable. If you see in grocery what they are doing, and they are still testing and trying to see and figure out ways of making it relevant. So I think that is quite a relevant player, but just to see that they are the best of breed in all the sectors, of course not. And in some contexts, they are a huge and relevant competitor. In others, you need to play with the assets that you have, and the assets could be the after-sales service that you provide. It could be the stores that you have and the role of the stores in this context. It could be several assets that you have as a retailer that could deliver a better service than what Amazon provides.
Exactly, and that's probably coming back to what Stephan was saying about the service and understanding the mindset of the passionate customer, whether they are in sports or anything else, and coming to, I mean, sticking to their needs from the very beginning where they engage with you. Wade, I'd like to, following this comment on Amazon, and thank you, Eduardo, you also have at Facebook a strong will to go into shopping, and you launched in New Zealand and Australia Facebook shops. what novelty does this bring to retailers? What's going to be its differentiator?
Sure. And again, before I go into that, I'll touch on the Amazon piece.
Yes.
My observation, having worked in the retail side, I don't believe it's versus Amazon. I believe it's with Amazon, right? You have to look at it's a channel that you can utilize, and if that's where customers are, you want to play where your customers are. It's coming up with the right strategy that works for Amazon. I know that we used to use it as our outlet store, so we would put a stock there, but it's making sure that you are able to create the strategy that fits in with the brand, that allows you to use and work with Amazon rather than fight against it. Now, in some places you can't as well, but Zalando, etc. There's many other online and pure players that you can work with. But if that's where the customers are, then that's where you also want to be, or you want your brand to be positioned so they can come outside of that ecosystem to then discover your brand off the back of it. So that's how I like to look at it. I see it as a sales channel, and working with the sales channel. It might not be my #1 sales channel, but it has got significant revenue. It was always double digit when I worked in the retail side, so it drove double digit revenue in for us. So that's just food for thought on that one.
Absolutely.
But yeah, when it comes to shops, what we're noticing is, like, right now, just businesses of all sizes, they've been forced. We've talked about this throughout this webinar, just to change their model and really adapt to online selling. And so what we're trying to do is just to accelerate our commerce work and just build solutions to help. And really the goal was just to make shopping seamless and empower, like, everyone, from whether you're a small business, an entrepreneur, right through to the largest brands, to use our apps and just to connect with customers. And so that's why we launched Facebook Shops. For me, simply, what does it mean? It's about creating a frictionless journey. That's how I'd like to look at it, right? I think Stephan said it best. It's about the customer experience being that key differentiator. And if you look at a typical customer journey, they start offline, whether it's in a Facebook or a Google, then they have to click, and then they come onto a website, and then it's a click and a click and a click. And it's about trying to find ways that, especially if you look at Instagram, it's really good at discovery commerce. We're seeing a lot of people being able to find out about new products just on Instagram or on the Facebook platform. And then what they have to do is, we will see a lot of people start to drop off through that funnel, is they have to click, click, click. Now, just imagine if they can just see the product, see the size or the color that they're after, and then to be able to make a purchase off the back of it. So that's really what it's about, is creating that frictionless journey for our retailers and also for the consumer.
I was on mute. Sorry. Sorry. That's very well put. Thank you, Wade. Let's move out now to sort of the final part of this conversation, and looking at the new models and how the cookie crumbled in a way. Stephan, I'd like to come back to you. I mean, we talk a lot about consumer behavior. How do you think behaviors will change? You're looking at the passion points that you address in particular.
Yeah, so one thing I think that we all agreed with, which is almost a no-brainer by now, is that online will become a more important part of consumers' shopping behaviors. I think the question there is which channel, as Wade put it nicely, right? Amazon is a strong channel, so you better play with them versus against them. Facebook might become a very important channel. WhatsApp might become one. Others might become one, right? So I think it's important to see, and that's a little bit early to call, what's the preferred route within online for consumers to go? And that is that's still open for me. So that's one of the interesting aspects, I think. The second is a little bit independent of channel. So that's a little bit to our business, to sports. We see a couple of mega trends that actually through the crisis have accelerated, right? They're around health, they're around sports and activity, they're around lifestyle. These things, and convenience, right, which has been a little bit older, but these mega trends basically support, our industry quite a bit, right? So we believe that consumers are increasingly exercising, increasingly taking maybe bikes to work versus cars, and there's a lot of activities from governments, from consumers going on to basically support that, right? More and more, for example, in bikes, more and more bike lanes are being put onto the streets, onto main streets right now, also in Berlin, for example. One of the main streets, northeast, west-east, are basically now, they were 2 lanes, now they're 1 lane, 1 bike lane, one car lane. Stuff like that is supporting consumer preferences. And I think that those have been accelerated through the crisis by becoming more aware of what's really important, how we can basically come out of the crisis with a little bit of a different way of living almost, right? And activity and sports, I think, will become one important part of that. So that's supporting our part of the world quite heavily.
Brilliant, yes. So less cars, more bikes. That's a good thought. Ignacio, coming back to you, I mean, we're talking about transformation to adapt to new consumer habits. Looking back, do you think you handle this transformation well, and do you think that technology will be more involved in your future plans? You mentioned the very strong database, for instance, that you have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, technology will be a facilitator, a clear facilitator, not missing, as I mentioned at the very beginning, not missing who you are in the game and what's the reason why you have been chosen. But technology must facilitate that role in your interaction with the customer. I mean, about mega trends, I'm seeing that even the future will change in some key facts, but we'll also recover some models from the past and enhance them. So it will be a mixture. It will be an hybridation of times. It's not going to be a new normal on that. It's going to be a different normal in which we will hybridate the best from the past and the best from the future. And technology must play a role on that. If it was important in the person-to-person contact in the past, the expertise, the knowledge and the service, technology will have to provide the sellers in a brick and mortar, for example, to really to hold this relationship, but with a human behavior really being backed in a good analytics tool, right? But the human behavior. Also values. I mean, it's going to be really important what matters in terms of values. Sustainability, it's going to be a must. I mean, well-being, welfare, well-behaving with the planet, cleaner planet, cleaner things, cleaner. I mean, it's going to, I mean, this kind of crisis it always helps to clean up the scenario on the screen. I mean, the new screen is now a wider, cleaner screen. And in that sense, all which really it's relevant, all which really matters in the relationship with will have to be enhanced, but leveraged by the technology. So we have to pay attention what are the levers on technology and what are not. I mean, probably we'll have to choose not to be really a leader in some of the technologies, but a follower. Traceability, it's going to be a must as well, linked also to value, and probably less volumes and more value into it, and a good experience in terms of, for example, in the case of fashion, it's not going to be fast fashion about just burning up trends. It's going to be about giving a right and fast service with no really friction.
Excellent. Well, so would you say that fast fashion will have to evolve its model as well? You know, the sourcing, the fabric, everything. This is a big discussion.
It is. I mean, it is. I mean, it's going to be about really concentrating in the best. I think. I mean, in the value of the materials. Probably new materials which are more sustainable will be really as value as older materials. Yes, logistic and fast and speed will be, as we mentioned, in terms of a speed of service, but not really in burning up trends and provoking more waste. It's going to be really of coming back to good products and good value to be as an investment. It's a revision of the value proposition, really, in terms of marketing, in terms of branding, in terms of service, and in terms of the product itself as a key point to relation. And technology will have to be a lever on that, not the holy grail of it.
Exactly. Well, that's a very good thought. I will come back to technology with Eduardo. You know, and the question, you know, we talk a lot about omni-channel retail, digital transformation. These are things that are almost given today. What do you think and you feel retailers should be focusing on now?
Just to give you an example, that we every year the business SONAE businesses, they have a plan for the next 5 years, and when this pandemic started, what we have assisted was a fast forwarding of 5 to 10 years. So all the plans were not useful anymore. So everything that you were expectations of evolution of your digital and also e-commerce was already useful, not useful at all. What I was meaning, that was you need to bring a new vision, you need to bring something that is relevant for what we are facing right now. And therefore it was everyone starting thinking that what you have in plan, you need to double, triple, or 4 times, 5 times better than what you had before. So I think that everyone was, for you to make it relevant, you need to have the people, the process, and related with the brand that you have, and also the technology that you enables you to be in contact in this journey with your customer. And I think that right now everyone is, I think omnichannel is critical. The omnichannel is not a strategy. Every brand should have what works best for them with all the channels that we have already discussed, social media, e-commerce platform, marketplaces, your website, third party. So what we have seen is that more and more we will see this as a new approach. And what we have in the beginning of 2000 in Asia with the ecosystems and how those evolve with SARS at the time, I think this with this fast forwarding, we see more and more this ecosystem. And of course you have players that are position themselves to be relevant players there, but we do not know how this will end up. But I think that what was your strategy before of silos, segmenting channels, and not having a holistic approach, that is not possible anymore.
Absolutely, and you talk about acceleration. Someone mentioned, you mentioned, sorry, fast forwarding, and yeah. Someone talked about acceleration. It's really accurate, and I think there's a lot of also skills around agility and improvisation in this day and age. Wade, do you want to comment on that a little bit, and then maybe we can also talk about how retailers can leverage the social media ecosystem Facebook offers in the future?
Yeah, like I really liked what Eduardo said around, removing the silos and taking the holistic approach. I think we've talked about removing silos for years. I've been in this industry for a long time, and it is that. But actually, that is the blocker, and it's going to take a change at the top. There's got to be a lot of thought. I was in digital transformation in 2010 with Danone. So that's sort of showing how long, this buzz has been going around. Agile then kicks in, and all of these bits and pieces. But it's mindset, right? It needs to be educated at the very top in order for it to move, and that's that holistic approach in order to make forward. And we talk about those accelerators, again, that Eduardo mentioned about the plan. We're seeing companies that had a 5-year plan that's saying, right, we've got 6 months to deliver the 5-year plan now. How do we do it? And they're breaking their business models. They're saying, right, we have to think differently, and how do we do that? And I would say when I look at a lot of the businesses that are in demise, they're still based in these hierarchical structures based around silos and my island, and this is, I have to protect my department and put my best foot forward for my department. And that's where they start to lose traction of the common goal. And that's that holistic approach, I guess, that like Eduardo was saying. So I see a lot of it. I just don't see the change. And I think it's the education that has to sit at the board level to realize that, you have to trust the millennials. You have to trust them. You have to work with them. And before joining Facebook, I would never have said that. Now I've been at Facebook, and we're led by a millennial, and we've been led by him for the last 15 years. And we see the success and the growth of this business off the back of it. But not just with Mark, we see it even within my teams. I see 20, 21-year-olds, 23-year-olds coming through with such intelligence on how to work in this modern world that you've got to stop and listen. And you can't just say, well, I've been doing this for this long, so therefore I know, you know. And it is removing that ego, being humble, really being keen to learn, you know. And I think that's the greatest gift that Facebook's given me, is just the ability to think differently, to not sit there and build into a hierarchical structure that I'm a manager, a head of, a director, or a C-suite, to actually sit there and say, right, where are the best ideas, and then how can we pull each other across to make this actually happen? So that's what we're seeing on that side. The question around how can retailers utilize the platform, I think it's all just been discussed. We're a channel at the end of the day, and it comes into your strategy and finding the best mix that fits into your strategy. It's understanding your customers and how the best to connect with them, whether it's through advertising, through organic posts and groups, whether it's through other channels. It's about creating that seamless experience and knowing, and someone touched on it earlier, right? What is the red thread that binds you, your brand, and making sure that, I think you said it best, right? There's always been about a single view of the customer, but it should be a single view of the business as well. So that is critical, and making sure that you're able to tell that story throughout, through all the different funnels, you know, from the top of the funnel right through to the bottom, that you have that consistency of brand, whether it's in your organic content or in your paid content as well, and across those different marketing channels.
Excellent. Well, thank you for this. I think we actually have covered a lot. I would like to ask all of you a final question. I mean, asking you to take a crystal ball, maybe, and share your predictions for the future, if any. What will the new normal or the next normal look like? Because I think you commented on the fact that there won't be a new normal. It's a different normal. And would there be, you know, sort of deep and structural impact on the retail models that you can think of? Maybe Stephan, you can start off on this question, please.
I'd like to, yes. So let me build on what Wade just said in terms of, I would rephrase a bit with a culture to fight for the best ideas, right? And not to go driven by hierarchies, by age, by experience, whatever, but being open, humble to see what's the best idea for the next step, right? If you couple that with one of the other big things, which is the exponential character of the technologies evolving, then I think a very, very big thing that we have to be aware of is the power of predictions coming from data. Big buzzword, right? But you see it in China, you'd see it in Asia, already very much realized or realizing, and we will see that in our world as well. So my crystal ball tells me that this is one of the key topics to embrace that has many, many, many facets. There's not one thing I think that I could quote now as being the most important. But if you combine those two things, the brilliant brains of people, you know, across gender, across ages, across experience, you know, all of that, and if you couple that with the exponential possibility opportunities of the technologies converging, that's the sweet spot you have to go about. And the glue is the data and the prediction possibilities and options that comes to that. That's my focus area for the next, I don't know how long, 10 years or more. Let's see.
Thank you, Stephan. Thank you very much. That was really, yeah, a good summary. Ignacio, what is your take on the future?
I think that, as I mentioned, this new phase with different normal will have to leverage the technology to really prioritize and rationalize values and priorities among us. I mean, the technology will help us to have a cleaner and better world, to organize better the time with the family, with time with at work, how to combine that, to rationalize the resources, the natural resources and the economical resources, and to put a bit more in order to values. I mean, that's going to be once again coming back to the values, to the beliefs, and to the commitments, but leverage with technology in order to combine all this in a rational mode, in a way in which, I mean, we do think really what is sustainability. Sustainability is to make something sustainable in time and in a proper way. And we will have to investigate more in that concrete word, not as a general use, but really as a rational. Something which is good is sustainable, something which is done gradually is sustainable, something that can allow everybody to participate, but not really burning it out is good. And that's going to be the levers, and technology will help us to prioritize, to put in order things, thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors.
Excellent. So values, new values. Do you feel that new values are important as well, Wade, maybe for this conclusion?
Yeah, values, mindset, people. You know, we've talked a lot about technology, and I wholeheartedly agree. And I love what Stephan also said about data, and being able to find the answers within the data to be able to make better and stronger predictions. I feel though, with technology, you have to make sure that it's the slave and not the master. And I find that a lot of businesses are jumping on the shiny disco ball of technology without really understanding the core proposition of what they needed. And so then they get tied up into the technology, and then they can't move forward, and they can't move fast. I think if you think about this new normal, any retailers that are thinking that once COVID-19 happens, they can't wait to turn the lights back on, I think they're going to struggle to survive. They are going to have to make change. We've talked about it throughout this whole webinar. The consumer behaviors change. Consumer confidence, we haven't touched on, but consumer confidence is really low. So it's going to even be harder to fight for those hard-earned pounds, dollars, or euros. So there is this big fundamental change that has happened because of COVID, the catalyst that's taken place. And so now we have to change that new normal. And I think businesses who will change that mind at the very top and saying, right, we have to do things different. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's rip things out and start again, and just look at it. You don't have to start again, but you might just have to look at things and saying, well, where are all the bottlenecks, and why were they bottlenecks, and how can we move forward on that? So I think that's the values that need to take place, is being open-minded, looking across the industry for or your business for the brightest minds, listening to what they have to say, and then finding ways that you can fail fast and fail cheap.
Excellent. So lots about people, in fact, and management. The last word is for you, Eduardo, on this same question, you know, predicting the future. What is your take on the future?
I think for us as an investor, this is quite amazing period, because we are seeing a transformation, and this transformation is from society, how people work and working from home and all that dynamic, also the consumer. I think these changes is something that will change the way we live, we interact, we shop throughout for the future. So I think that's what worked in the past, for sure. If you want to replicate that, it will not succeed in the future. So I think that right now is a moment of change, and these dynamics of what is retail, the boundaries of retail is moving and will move dramatically. So I think that we need to be prepared for that change. And the crystal ball, or saying that go this way or that way, is that as Wade mentioned, to fail fast and to try new things, not be afraid of having new approaches. Otherwise, if you stick to the formula of success of the past, you will fail for sure.
Well, that's a very good conclusion. I think do not stick to the old formulas, invent new formulas, and be ready for being very humble with change and how you manage your team. Thank you very much, all of you, Ignacio, Eduardo, Stephan, and Wade, for this great sharing of insights and thoughts. Thank you for being with us, and really looking forward to seeing what your business will be doing in the future. Hopefully, we can have the same conversation in a year from now with a much better perspectives. Thank you very much, and we'll see you very soon. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michel. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.